All right. Happy Thursday, January 21st, everybody. It is a monumentous occasion for Backdrop. Actually, it was last week, but this is our first meeting since we've gotten to talk and celebrate all of the amazing things that happened. So happy 1.3.x, everybody. We are now in the future. Hooray! Let's see, general announcements. Obviously, Backdrop 1.3.0 was released last Friday with much fanfare and a celebratory trip to our local curry restaurant. I don't know what you guys did to celebrate, but we had a good time over here. I just wanted to say, like, I know there was a little lull on development at the end of the year as everybody was trying to get ready all of their normal work and stuff, but come holiday season, it was like nobody had anything to do but work on Backdrop, and we got so much amazing things done. It was just like 4 solid weeks of Backdrop progress, and we ended up getting so much done for the 1.3 release in the final hours there. It was fantastic to have. You know, I was just like, this is an interesting idea. I'm just going to assign it to Jeff. And then Nate's like, oh, yeah, I merged that. And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even see it between when I was, like, idea to, like, finish. So there's just so much stuff where everybody was contributing and reviewing things, and we got a bunch of feedback, and 1.3 is a fantastic release. So thank you to everybody who pitched in and did a ton of work right there at the very end to help us kind of make it as fantastic as it was. For those of you who haven't seen it, Nate published the blog post yesterday. It's at backdropcms.org/news, our new news section. The top post there's got really cool little animated GIFs and stuff that are demonstrating some of the great new features that we have. I am so excited to start using it. I can't wait to build new sites on it and upgrade my old sites and get everybody running the latest and greatest. So, hooray. Other general announcements, obviously we have t-shirts and hoodies. If you want to celebrate your Dragon Pride, put them on. If you don't have one yet, you can order one, backdropcms.org/contribute. You make a donation and we'll send you things. Wes, I hope you got your things. Yes, okay, good. We sent a bunch out in the last few weeks, and I forgot to follow up, but that's good. We also have new PHP Storm licenses for Backdrop Contrib developers. So unfortunately, if you're a core developer, you don't get one. But if you're a Contrib developer, we can give you a Backdrop license for PHP Storm. So if you are a member of Backdrop Contrib group, send an email to info@backdropcms.org. If you have a pending application, we have a pending license key for you, and we'll help get you over whatever hurdles are necessary in order to get you your license key to get you involved in all that stuff. So that's that. No significant updates from the project management committee, so let's turn it over to Nate for community growth.
Yeah, exciting week. Man, it's crazy. Okay, I'll talk about all of our releases when we get down to that schedule, or that part of the schedule. But community growth, we've had 5 new projects published in the Backdrop Contrib group. That's awesome since last week. Bringing our total to 195 total projects for Backdrop. There are 118 projects with official releases that have been published on backdropcms.org. That's 2 more since last meeting. And there's been 4 new releases of said projects since last week, bringing the total to 160. We have 45 total Contrib authors. There's a couple more in the application process right now. One has actually already been approved, but we're waiting for him to accept the Contrib agreement, which is great. And there are 80 total user accounts on backdropcms.org, 12 new signups since last meeting. So really great, really excellent growth. It's great to see. I love seeing those new Contrib developers coming in. I think that's what gets me most excited when I go over this every week. If you're interested in joining the Backdrop Contrib group, you can do so by visiting github.com/backdrop-ops/contrib. And that's our issue queue where we handle all Contrib applications. That URL is also at the top of the Contrib group, which is github.com/backdrop-contrib. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about that. Let's see. Let's roll right into infrastructure. Infrastructure are things around the Backdrop project, like backdropcms.org, GitHub integration, Drush, things like that. Update checking for backdropcms.org. Gosh, we really need to get this one just removed from our list because it's been update checking's been working for ages, but our analytics script isn't running. The thing that we're holding off on is that Travis CI right now is currently reporting its usages into our totals, and so it's screwing up all the analytics because the more pull requests we have, like the past couple of weeks before the release of 1.3, we have spikes in usages, and then it goes back down afterwards because Travis CI is reporting itself as being an installation. So we need to get that fixed, or we'd like to get it fixed before we crunch all of our numbers to generate our historical usage data. After we get that in place, we would also like to start tracking individual features that are used within Backdrop, things like what color schemes people are using, what core modules they've turned on, what contrib modules inside of contrib projects they've turned on, certain settings like whether or not they have clean URLs. We'd like to get all of those things being tracked, and that way we would be able to see like which features are being used and which ones aren't, or which core modules never get turned on, those sorts of things. Although that actually doesn't need to wait at all. It could happen at any time. And that's in a lot of these issues are in the backdropcms.org queue, and that's issue 99, where we're trying to talk about what kind of features we would like to collect specifically from individual sites. And that'll take a little bit of coordination because we'll need to build out functionality in core, in update module, and we'll need to build out the functionality on backdropcms.org to actually calculate and accrue that data. So that's definitely going to take a bit of work and a bit of time to actually bring that to fruition. Drush for Backdrop. Drush for Backdrop is issue number 47 in the Backdrop issue queue. We've had a working prototype for a couple of weeks. I know Jeff's been working on improving it and fixing some issues in there. It's really on my plate, and I swear to God it'll happen this week, to move that into the contrib group. And once it's in the contrib group, I'm going to give Jeff commit access. Actually, I don't need to give him commit access because he'll already have it, but I'll add him as a maintainer in the README file to make it so that he can actually start working on fixing those issues directly, because I know he's already fixed a couple of them, and it'll be great to get them into the official project and get the official project into the contrib group so that more people can work on it besides just my little sandbox. Let's see. So I'm going to skip ahead to GitHub automation. GitHub automation, there's a bunch of things that we'd like to do to smooth over some of our community processes. One thing that we'd love to do is somehow automate the contrib group applications to make it so that we could automatically check for things like when somebody applies to the contrib group, that we could check their module, maybe run like an automated code check on it, make sure the word Drupal doesn't appear anywhere, Drupal namespace functions aren't used anywhere, that they're using config instead of variables, that they have a README file and a license file, and then that will smooth over the amount of manual work that we have to do when a user wants to join the contrib group. We also want to do some work because of the way we have GitHub set up between our pull requests and our issues. We're using two separate repositories, and that was a recommendation actually made by GitHub. If you need more granular control over who can tag issues versus who can commit to your repository, which is kind of ridiculous that you can't label or organize your issues unless you can also commit to the project. So what we've been doing is we've used two separate repositories, one for issues and one for the code itself. And we'd like to make it so that when you make an issue and you label it as having like a pull request and that it needs review, it would also update the corresponding pull request to keep those tags in sync, to make it so that we can see which pull requests need work versus which pull requests are just just like proof of concepts.
And also, it would be great, like if a pull request fails automated test, it should get a tag needs work, and so should the corresponding issue. So that should go both ways.
Right. So that kind of brings us to, well, there's a whole bucket of items for GitHub automation that there's a tag for it, GitHub automation, in the backdropcms.org issue queue. And there's a bunch of other kind of wish list items that we'd like to get integrated there. But that brings us to the next item on the list, which is backdropcms.org. One of the primary things we'd like to do on backdropcms.org is add some kind of single sign-on that uses your GitHub credentials. And that single sign-on actually would empower us to do a lot more than just log into the website. It really would be if we can validate your user account on GitHub, then we can affiliate the two. And maybe you wouldn't necessarily need or want to sign on with your GitHub account into backdropcms.org, but it would allow us to build out all kinds of tools on backdropcms.org that then bind or affiliate information across between backdropcms.org and GitHub. For example, like if you make a new release of your project right now, all releases are just owned by user ID number 1, I think, on backdropcms.org. But if you made a release on GitHub and we knew what your GitHub username was definitively because you had connected the two, then we can make your user own the release node on backdropcms.org, which would make it so you could edit it. So those kinds of things.
User 1 on backdropcms.org is the dragon.
Yeah,
the dragon owns everybody's releases.
Yeah, UID 1 on backdropcms.org is drop. So drop owns all releases at this point. So anyway, single sign-on with GitHub. We'd love to get it integrated into backdropcms.org, and it will empower us to do all kinds of other integrations between our website and GitHub once we have that information. Other ideas that we'd like to have on backdropcms.org, a showcase for websites built with Backdrop, so people can write up, what are those called? Case studies. Case studies going over individual sites that they built and why they built it in Backdrop and what kinds of features and modules they used. We'd like to have a service provider / contractor listing eventually. I think we already have supporter nodes on backdropcms.org, and I think, is it this right, Jen, that we kind of hope to expand that out to be into service providers? Maybe I'm thinking of that.
We might do a little differently. I really like the way Drupal.org has like that reference field that you can use on a person to say I'm part of a company. You can do it on a comment to attribute whatever. I think it would be great if we could kind of figure out the same sort of architecture model where you can say I work for a company and the company provides these services, and then if the company was involved in this case study, just so you can get all those kind of references every way. And I think our current supporter field might not be, or a current supporter list might not be adequate for that. So we might just create something new, and then we can change it around without worrying about getting rid of anyone's data accidentally. But what we will do is we'll put that supporter list as it is now on the homepage. We'll just move that to our service provider listing page and put it on there, so that as we're adding other things to the homepage, like maybe the showcase or whatever else, and that becomes less important. If you're trying to find a service provider, you'll be able to go to that supporter list because those people are also likely going to be service providers too. So before we get a whole bunch of service providers, we'll still provide links to all of those websites. That was a lot of words.
Okay. So yeah, we would like to have it. An event calendar of some kind is also on the docket for backdropcms.org. Have we had any ideas about how we would like to do that? Are we thinking like nodes with date module, or are we thinking Google Calendar, or what sort of solutions are we thinking about?
No, I don't really think I mean, we have a Google Calendar now. I don't think we need a Google Calendar. I think just a node with a date, and we can just build a view of upcoming events, and then we can provide in our iCal feed if people want to add as their own calendars.
Okay, that sounds like it would work. Let's see, and also a jobs board. for people looking for work.
Or looking for workers.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. We also have some issues to improve the interfaces for finding modules, themes, and layouts. There's a meta issue over in the backdropcms.org issue 95 that covers some design elements that weren't quite completely implemented, as well as some abilities like sorting on usage information. Right now it's just sorted by publish date, which isn't particularly useful. But once we have the usage information accruing, we can start sorting on other things, and making it so that you can choose what sort you want and things like that are all in that issue of follow-up issues for improving our modules, themes, and layout location pages. Let's see. Blog news announcement follow-up issues. Could you elaborate on this, Jen?
So we have a design review that Darius is going to try and do by, I think, the middle of next month, where we just need to get some eyes on like the news page itself and on the news posts and make sure that we're in line with our style guidelines.
Gotcha. Why don't you go into news and announcements, Jen?
Sure. So, news this week, obviously 1.3.0 is our most exciting thing. The blog post is up at the news section if you want to look at that now. Our next blog on the schedule is currently for February 7th. Is that right? February 5th, I think. I got that date wrong. And Nate's going to write up, yeah, it's on here twice. Nate's going to write up a post about PHP 7 support. He's going to do benchmarks on Backdrop before and after PHP 7 because we think that it's going to be a lot faster and it'll be really cool to have some actual numbers that back that up. But obviously, he's been a little busy lately with Backdrop 1.3 coming out. So getting the benchmarking suite running and getting those benchmarks done wasn't obviously a priority. But I think it would be a great news post to be able to talk about how fast Backdrop can go. That's something I don't think Drupal 7 has PHP 7 support yet, so it also will be a good differentiator between trying to figure out whether you want to build a new Backdrop site or a new Drupal 7 site. If we could do speed test comparisons, that might be kind of fun. So that's coming soon. And we've also been getting a whole bunch of great ideas from the larger community about things we should put on our blog. I received a great blog post from Graham, our first draft, this morning about theme development for Backdrop, and I think that would be good because we don't have a lot of voices about theming elsewhere, using the blog to kind of showcase how people have done things like tips and tricks. I think might be a great place to do that. I also opened a new issue in the queue this morning about a community spotlight type blog post thing, which I think would be great, where we could kind of get feedback from various people in the community, maybe get some good questions going about what do you want to know about people in the community, and kind of set up maybe an interview format. So we've got some ideas about other things to put on our blog coming up soon as well. So I was thinking we could sprinkle these other posts kind of between all of the officially scheduled posts. As they get ready, we can just kind of post them whenever. So anyone else has any ideas about anything we should blog about, even if it's a case study of a site on Backdrop or something like that, we could definitely squeeze that into. So add a comment to the issue is number 158 if you have something you want in the blog, and we can get it scheduled. We also have a bunch of other stuff coming up. Since 1.3 just came out, we've gotten on the blog or on the podcast rotation for a bunch of different groups. Starting this Friday, we've got a Drupal Easy podcast. Next Tuesday, we're going to do a Lullabot podcast. We also got approved to do a webinar. Somebody actually reached out to me asking if I would do a webinar on Drupal 8, and I'm like, I don't really know what's going on in Drupal 8 anymore, but I know what's going on in Backdrop, and they're like, Backdrop, we want Backdrop. So that was really exciting that they were so thrilled about wanting to get Backdrop on their schedule, and they're like, Backdrop, we want Backdrop now. Actually, our next spot, we need that to be Backdrop. And I was like, okay. So we're going to try and come up with some webinar content, which will be fun. And that's currently scheduled for February 24th, which was their next webinar. So that'll be fun. And then, of course, as we get more things on the schedule, we'll throw them in here and talk about them too. Cool stuff. Let's see. Next on the list is Backdrop itself. Nate, do you want to talk about all the little releases?
Yeah. So we had a strange week of releases. So as everybody knows, Backdrop 1.3.0 came out on January 15th, which was Friday. And it was great that it came out. We were all excited. A bunch of people that are on this call actually all updated their websites and then reported feedback saying, yay, it worked. Yay, it was so exciting. The upgrade went so well, which is fantastic that it went well for most people. Although I found out, we found out that there were a couple of issues that cropped up. And so we had one issue with the background fetch that it was causing a PHP notice on every cached page serve, but it wasn't very visible because the notice was happening after the page had been delivered. So it was basically just filling up people's logs, which was kind of a large-ish issue. And so we made 1.3.1 to fix that problem just yesterday. That got pushed out. But then in the process of pushing out the updates to Pantheon, we also noticed that when you're upgrading from an older backdrop site to 1.3, that your color scheme goes from blue to black, which was not supposed to happen. We did a bunch of work making it so that people's color schemes specifically would stay exactly as they were, in fact. And so that caused another issue that was pretty jarring for people upgrading. And so we made 1.3.2. So it was quite a week. We had 3 releases just this past week, which I guess is kind of to be expected when we make a new minor release, that once it gets into a broader testing sphere, that obviously a lot more people start using it, and so the problems become more obvious. So our current version is 1.3.2. Which is exciting. It's currently the version that is available for download on backdropcms.org. It's also pushed up to Pantheon, so if you are running a Pantheon website or have used the button on the homepage of backdropcms.org to spin up a Pantheon website, now Pantheon will update itself to the latest version of Backdrop as well. So that's the explanation for why we're on 1.3.2 when 1.3 just came out this past week.
Fixing all the bugs.
Fixing all the bugs, that's right. So the next release, bug fixing release, will be 1.3.3. We don't have anything immediately scheduled for that bug fixing release. It'll be as needed if any other critical issues come up, or after we have accrued enough minor problems to make it worthwhile to make a new bug fix release. Then we'll put out that version just as needed. Let's see. 1.4.0 is the next minor release, which will be coming out May 15th, 2016. And there are a bunch of items that didn't make it into 1.3 that would be lovely to get them into 1.4. Specifically, like a bunch of the UX work that we started on, we didn't actually bring it quite to completion, and so it's not in 1.4 or 1.3. It's not here in the agenda, but some things that were getting close, or at least we put in some nice effort on.
Project Browser.
Yeah, Project Browser in particular. Got really close. It actually, it had pull requests. We've got Project Browser server up on backdropcms.org. All the capabilities are there and actually works, but it needs basically like a usability review and some tighter integration, because the way it's implemented right now, it's a little bit redundant with some of the other bits and pieces in Project module right now, or in Update module. It also would be, since we've got a little bit more time, nice to separate Project Browser so that you could do the thing, you could install modules without needing to turn on Update module. It's a little bit weird that they're bound together. But on the other hand, Update module is a lot less annoying than it was in 1.2 because of our new notification icon moving it into like the admin bar instead of spewing giant red errors all over the place. So hopefully that encourages more people to leave update module enabled because it's generally less obnoxious than it had been in the past. Let's see. Wes's work on, he just got up, but Wes's work on field UI I also would love to see implemented. Just kind of finishing, maybe not finishing, field UI, like we've got a bunch of different ideas, but not a whole lot of implementation yet. But finishing up some of those UX improvements that we started in 1.3 but didn't quite bring to completion, it would be great to see those in the future. So our scheduled items for 1.4, the biggest item we've got here is we want to have references module or a solution like references module in core. So something universal that would replace node reference, user reference, term reference, maybe. We'll see. I'm not quite sure how that would work, getting rid of our existing term references, because they're a little bit special. They're different than other types of references. So we'll see what kind of work is involved in that. Issue 1301. Our plan right now is to basically take a look at the capabilities of references module in Drupal 7 contrib, but we'd like to largely give it a rewrite for consistency with the way Backdrop Core writes things, and also using Backdrop Core's entity integration instead of entity API. So in the references module in D7 contrib, there's a lot of kind of unusual coding for Drupal 7 and especially for Backdrop. Like it's just not very standardized compared to the rest of our core. We'd also like to add redirect module, some kind of solution like redirect module into core that's issue 905. The primary reason for this is because we've got Path Auto in core, and Path Auto, when you automatically when you change a title and you automatically generate a new URL, right now the behavior for those old patterns, old paths, is very unfriendly. That it basically you can leave both of them there, or you can delete the old one. But the ideal solution would be after a new path is generated, it would create a redirect from the old one to the new one to make it so you have a single canonical path. Because having multiple aliases on the same piece of content is just a big confusing mess. Let's see. We'd also love to have a new front-end theme that's issue 1361. Jen, has there been some thoughts going on around that this week? I thought that I saw some discussion there.
I think you're thinking about the layouts.
Okay. So with the front-end theme, our plan here is still to come up with a theme that is, a combination of good-looking yet generic, and have that developed in contrib. And then after it becomes polished, we would like to move it into core for 1.4.0. Have we had any volunteers in taking on that particular task? Wes raises his hand silently. Yeah, I wonder, design-wise, like we're going to need some assistance on that. I would expect. Andy says, "I thought everyone was going to vote." I think that's awesome. I mean, sure. Like if we have multiple options, we would love to have a vote for vote for who was going to do it. Well, I guess there's multiple ways I could take that. Like everybody votes. I vote on themes. Okay, more clear. Yeah, I think voting is a good idea also. If we have multiple options, it will absolutely come down to that.
Did we even establish like criteria yet? I was just looking through this issue to see like what's necessary versus what's wanted. I don't even know if we have such a thing.
Yeah,
we created an issue for that, but I'm not sure if anyone has contributed to it much.
So I'm looking at 1361. This might not be the right issue for the criteria.
Yeah, this is a ticket where I said, would it perhaps be beneficial to list out the requirements? But then people wrote, like, be mobile friendly.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. So we probably should continue developing that list of requirements. Personally, I was thinking about working on an actual good Bootstrap theme implementation for us, but I'm not sure if that was something we want to put as our core theme, because it would come along with a lot of extra stuff that we probably don't need. But I imagine lots of people start their site designs with Bootstrap these days, so it might be good to have.
Yep, I agree. And like some things are not clear at all. Like, you know, should it integrate with color module? Is that like a requirement? Because it has been for past Drupal themes, you know, or past Drupal core themes. When Bartik went in to replace Garland, it got held up because people were like, it used to only be blue, and people were like, no, 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 it has to be color module enabled because Garland was color module enabled. So, yeah, ideas. Let's discuss it in the issue queue. That's issue 1361. We've also pasted a link in the chat here in the meeting. We're also discussing, besides a new core theme, we're also talking about new core layouts. And initially, I guess this title is actually still labeled Add Radix Layouts to Core. Radix is a set of layouts that are all Twitter Bootstrap based, using Bootstrap's grid system. We're not sure about that. There's been some back and forth on whether or not that's a good idea. It is interesting that there are, I mean, it really widens the options for how you can lay out your page, adds quite a few different layouts that you can use. But we're also concerned about the strain that might put on theme developers, that they would have to deal with that many more variations of ways that a page could possibly be laid out. So there's some back and forth on that, and we'd love to discuss more in issue 698 about core layouts and which core layouts we should potentially include in core.
Also, that discussion might depend on if we decide to use Bootstrap in the base theme, then it might make sense to use the Bootstrap grid system in the core layouts. But if we don't, then maybe it doesn't. So.
Yep. Good points. Okay, and we also have just continuous improvements that are happening all the time. They're tagged generally with UX in square brackets on GitHub, or developer experience, which is tagged with square brackets DX on GitHub, which we're just continuously improving constantly. As for other things that aren't particularly scheduled for 1.4.0, our policy towards other features is always, if it's ready, then that's great. We will include it as long as it is appropriate for core, which we'll evaluate against our philosophy, of course, to decide that, and that it's totally ready. So things that are polished and complete can be put in any time as long as they're appropriate for core. But our focus for 1.4.0 are the things that we just talked about. 1.3.0, for example, transliteration was not on our overall schedule. It wasn't on our focus, but it was done and it was completed, and so it was moved into core for that release. So if you have other ideas, we won't stop you from implementing any of them. And if they get done and if they're complete, then they'll be moved into this next.
Unless it's a bad idea, we'll stop you if it's a bad idea.
Yeah, and if it's a bad idea, we'll try to stop you.
We'll try.
Okay, sprints every Thursday. That's today, of course. We get together and we hammer out backdrop stuff. I swear to God, Jeff, I will transfer like the Drush. I'll transfer the Drush repository today. That will be my absolute for certain task that I complete during sprint time. But we hang out in Pound Backdrop in IRC on Freenode. We've also really been using Gitter quite a bit recently, which if you visit gitter.im/backdrop, then you can join in the Backdrop issue Gitter channel, and we've been conversing there as well. But the primary place of all communication is the Backdrop issue queue on GitHub. It's github.com/backdrop/backdrop-issues. And that's where all of our communication happens, our primary communication happens in record of what it is that we're actually working on. So if you're interested in working today, we hope to see you there. Let's see, we also have a Reddit. I haven't been looking at the Reddit anytime recently, but it looks like it's still kind of pushing stuff up there. Maybe because Jim Birch, our new social director, has been doing an awesome job doing tweets and Facebooks and
yeah, can we just thank Jim for a minute, because I have to say, like, that I am so impressed by all of the things that Backdrop has been tweeting, and we've been getting a ton of activity. Like, people are favoriting and responding, and I think it's exactly what we wanted, is to kind of make a little more noise and have people not forget we existed. And he's been doing such a great job with the right tone and the right reactions from everyone. So thank you, Jim, for being awesome on Twitter and everywhere else.
Yes, totally. Which also, of course, brings up the point that you can follow Backdrop on Twitter. We are twitter.com/backdropcms, and on Facebook, very similar, facebook.com/backdropcms. And we're posting things really regularly there now, primarily with Jim's help. So if you want to keep your finger on the pulse of Backdrop, those are two great resources to do so. Let's see, we also have an iCal feed of upcoming Backdrop events and meetings. It looks like we've got two of them. The iCal feed for Backdrop meetings, such as this one, as well as the design meeting that happens every other week. The link for that you can get from the agenda, which is attached to these video recordings. It's
also on backdropcms.org/contribute or /resources.
All right, well, that's even better. So you can find a list of all upcoming Backdrop meetings and events that are Backdrop friendly or will have Backdrop presentations at them. A couple of those that are coming up. Sand Camp is February 25th through 27th, and there will be a full-day Backdrop training workshop there. Jen and I will both be down there in San Diego doing some Backdrop training. If you're interested in learning about Backdrop, it's a great opportunity. Drupal Camp Utah is March 4th through 5th. They've been looking for Backdrop presenters, but they haven't actually found one yet. So if you're interested in talking about Backdrop in any capacity whatsoever, you can be brand new to it, you can have just installed it once or twice and you just have some thoughts about it. They would love to have some information about Backdrop at their camp. Let's see, Mid-Camp in Chicago is March 19th through 22nd. What's our news on that one, Jen? Are you and I planning on being there?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
But just historically, Mid-Camp has been very friendly to Backdrop. We gave a presentation there.
Andy's probably going to be there.
Oh, yes, and Andy will be there.
Maybe.
And Wes. Wes, you'll be at Mid-Camp? Oh,
yeah, that's where my family's from.
An intro to Backdrop talk.
Yep. So
that's happening. Okay, awesome. And then CIVECON for CIVECRM is coming up in May or June. I guess they don't have the exact dates yet in Denver. And we hope to be there as well because of our recent work to integrate Backdrop CMS with CIVECRM. We're hoping that we can attend that conference and let people know about some alternatives they have if they have an existing Civ installation coupled with Drupal 7, that we have some options for them moving forward with their websites. Let's see, Publicity. The Backdrop CMS first book upgrading from Drupal to Backdrop CMS is available on Apress, and now finally, we mentioned last week too, but finally you can get it from Amazon. They had the date wrong and wouldn't let you buy it until next December, which was quite a long wait. But now you can find it on Amazon if you search for Backdrop CMS. The first ever Backdrop CMS book. It's pretty short. It's actually, I think it's only like 100-some pages or less, 89 pages. So it's a pretty short introduction, just basically dipping your toe in the water, introduction to Backdrop CMS. But Todd Tomlinson is also working on a beginning Backdrop CMS book, which should be out sometime, it says here, Q2 2016. So he's hard at work working on a comprehensive Backdrop CMS book talking about the entire system. So we're really excited to have those books written and to be out in print. That's the end of the agenda. Anybody have anything else to bring up or talk about?
I'd like to ask a question about configuration management in Git. Do you guys on backdropcms.org are using the figure 8 approach?
Yeah.
So when you push things to the live site, is your version out of sync? Is it you have stuff that's in the live bucket that's not in version control?
So no, in general, what happens is before we do any work on the backdropcms.org website, I'll commit everything that's in the live config directory, and then pull it down or tell whoever's working on it to pull, so that they get the latest set of configurations in the live directory. And then they should run the importer script, which that way, or if it's fresh database copy, that would also work too. You can just manually copy the files over so that they're in the dev directory. And then when they're done, they'll submit a pull request that contains all of the configuration changes that they made in the development directory. And then when I pull to the production site, we'll run the update script on production that will then copy those files from the development directory to the production directory and run any updates that are necessary for those as well.
So you're doing a commit and push from the server to start that process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Yep, and that way you get all of your oddities and all of the resolving conflicts and anything like that all happens on your local. So before you start committing any changes into configuration, the first thing you should do is go to live production. Production changes are committed in version control before you start trying to get those before you commit any configuration changes from your local dev.
Yeah, and that's really important. And one of the things that I've found is that it really gets messed up when you have some changes on your dev and some changes on live and you push, because right now we have no way to individually mark without copying the files, which you can't do on Pantheon and stuff like that. But I mean, there's no way to individually apply or not apply the configuration changes. So then it requires some very complicated, then you have to pull everything down to dev, copy the files manually, and then recommit it. And yeah, so we need to work on that workflow a bit.
Yeah, especially on Pantheon, that workflow gets kind of sticky because you don't have access. It's a little easier for us on backdropcms.org because we can just go in there and move stuff around. But on Pantheon, where they want your config in the files directory, because that's where it's writable, it gets really messy because you can't get to that to move things around the way you'd want to.
Yeah. So I'd love to see if we can come up with some additional tools to use to help resolve those issues, things where we can easily import or refer individual files through the UI rather than just the import all button.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think individual files through the UI is definitely on our to-do list. I think that's going to make a big difference. I also think it would be great.
Do you have a ticket for that anywhere? I haven't seen a ticket for that anywhere.
Well, you can already do individual files. Like if you want just a single file, you can already do an individual export and an individual import.
Well, with copying and pasting.
Oh, right. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Because we have the compare with all the nice diffs and stuff like that. It'd be good to pull up the diff and then say, oh, get rid of this, or import this.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
and then
also, I think we could get some help from the folks at Pantheon too. If we were like, look, this is the problem with the current setup. We've used it for a year. Like, we know now that this is going to continue to be a problem. Let's get a tool. We could probably, especially if we're willing to work something into Drush, like a Drush sync or Drush unsync or whatever it is we come up with. There might be some way that we can get a tool that would let us do that, and they would help us with that on Pantheon too. So I think, initially they were like, well, we don't really know how it's going to work because nobody's using it, and now we have people using it, and we know how it works, and we can start to make some progress on that too.
Well, I just updated the blog post thing, and I said that I was going to write a blog post about the way that I've been doing it, and maybe that's a good starting point. That just explain how I've been handling the configuration management, and then we can see what changes need to be made.
Okay, fantastic.
I think on Pantheon for Drupal 8 they use an rsync. I haven't read it thoroughly, but that's how they deal with it. On Acmia, they have kind of the doc root inside the Git repo, kind of like you have for backdropcms.org. I'm kind of surprised Pantheon isn't going that way too, but
yeah, Pantheon right now is so odd how they require that your installation of Backdrop be in the root, or installation of Drupal be in the root, and it's really kind of obnoxious because there's a lot of other stuff you frequently want to put in your site that's affiliated with it that shouldn't be in the web root, like configuration files.
Well, that's a little bit less important now that we have the core directory, because now we do have like all the other directories other than core are sort of site specific already. So adding I add a patches directory in there and add a config staging directory, and it sort of goes along, since everything other than core is just site specific.
Accessible.
So it's a bit better now.
Cool. Well, I think that answered your question, Jeff.
yes, thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. Well, let's call it a call. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we will meet up again next week. Next week will be both the design meeting earlier in the day, an hour earlier, and then this regular weekly developer call, as always. So thanks, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next week. Oh, and an RC.
You didn't GitHub.
And GitHub. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.